Yo, welcome into the BeBall Jones podcast. The goal of this podcast in my business is to bridge the gap, to fuel hoop dreams into impactful realities on the court and beyond. So thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoy it. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the BeBall Jones podcast. And I am here with a special guest. This is a special coach right here, man. We got a P5 coach here. This man has took a nice little journey to get to this position. So I want you guys to get some help right here. So I had to call in Mr. Erick DeRoo to help you guys out, man. What's going on, Eric?
What's going on, man? Glad to be here.
And I'm glad that you're here, man. Can you tell the people why you're so great and why you're on this podcast, man?
Oh, I'm not great by any means. I've been blessed with opportunities, and I think that's part of what we talked about, behind stage was I've just been blessed with opportunities at my age and my situation that I use networking and social media to help me boost who I was and what I knew. But I've just been fortunate, which is why I try to give back to other coaches and high school recruits and their parents, because I've been blessed with my own situation. I want everybody else to feel the same way.
Yeah, I got you, man. Like your shirt says, you're at Texas Tech, man, and that's no small feat. But what got you this position? Because I know you just didn't wake up and like, you know what, guys, I want to be a coach. And Texas Tech called you like, hey, we heard you want to be a coach. Like, let's get you up here. So how'd you get to Texas Tech?
Yeah, I'll try not to be too long-winded with this answer, but I'm from East Texas originally, Tyler, Texas, and growing up, everyone has aspirations of being something, right? Like right now, it's every if you ask a junior high kid, they want to be a YouTuber, right, or something with social media. Like that's kind of the trend right now. But when I was growing up, it was you wanted to be a doctor, a policeman, you name it, whatever. That was like the general route, and I knew early in my life, fourth grade probably, that I wanted to be a college basketball coach, Division I college basketball coach. And I don't really know. I have ideas of why that is. I've always loved March Madness, and I always loved filling out my paper brackets. People don't even know about the paper brackets anymore, but that was like my love, my spring breaks, because it was all March Madness and all basketball. But my parents never played sports really, weren't basketball junkies like I am now. But I just knew. I knew at a young age that I was going to be Division I college basketball coach, and so as I went through my journey of high school basketball, I realized at one point that I wasn't going to play in the NBA. And so it was college coaching was going to be the route. And that meant I needed to go play college basketball. So I worked as hard as I could for my lack of knowledge of basketball in regards to like family legacy, things of that nature, and earned a Division III opportunity and played 2 years at the University of Texas at Tyler, and then transferred and played at McPherson College in Kansas and NAIA school. But that was like my first year at UT Tyler. My head coach asked me like what my goal and aspirations were. And I was like, I always wanted to be a Division I college coach. And I was always on the men's side. Like in my head, I was going to be a Division I men's coach. And he basically was like, hey, it's really hard to make it on the men's side. All these reasons why I couldn't do it, whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'll be the next Coach K. Right. And he ended the conversation with, well, if you really want to coach Division I basketball, you should look on the women's side. And in fairness, I probably laughed at it or laughed on my way out the door of like, no shot, like I'm going to do this thing. And 2 years later, when I moved up to Kansas to McPherson College, the only person I knew in the state of Kansas was Stacy Malone, who played at Kansas State for women's basketball at Kansas State. And I was going to practices, open runs, all the games I could make at K-State. And I kind of fell in love with Big 12 basketball and Kansas State women's basketball. And Deb Patterson was the head coach there. She's now on staff at Washington State with Cami Etheridge. Cami Etheridge was there too. And I've got to know them relatively well. And I was hoping that after my college career ended that I was going to get to stay and hopefully become a GA at K-State. It didn't work out that way. Deb Patterson was let go, unfortunately, that year. And it kind of turned the cycles in the college basketball world. And, I told you behind stage, I feel like networking was my big thing. And that I was very fortunately that spring break of my senior year of college, the junior college national tournament was in Kansas. On the men's side, it's always been in Hutch and will always be in Hutch, Kansas. On the women's side, at the time it was in Salina, Kansas, was 15 minutes away from where I was playing. And so I went to every junior college national game that spring break, literally 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. Every single day I was there. And if y'all don't know about JUCO basketball, the nationals, the only people that are there, those players' parents and Division I college basketball coaches. And so between every single game, I went and shook every hand that I could, asked about how they got into college basketball, how they got into coaching, and just words of wisdom. I wasn't asking for a job. I just wanted to learn from these people that have made it. And the second day, I very fortunately shook the right person's hand. Her name was Jamie White at the University of Northern Colorado. And we had a good conversation about 30 minutes between a game. And at the end of it, she was like, Eric, she's like, I really don't know like why, we met or at this point. But on my way from my drive from Colorado to Kansas, my athletic director called me and said, you can hire a GA for the first time. And they had transitioned from Division II to Division I. And so they weren't fully funded yet, really. And so she's never had a GA before. She was like, I think I want to hire you. And so she was like, send me your resume and I'll be here the rest of the week. And so every day I talked to her, and her last day was the semifinal game. And she was like, Eric, she was like, let's meet at this Chili's before these games. And so we met at that Chili's and we sat there like 2 hours. And like, I didn't realize it was an interview, but like we literally just shot the bull for 2 hours and like learned about each other. And by the end of it, she was like, I think I want to hire you. And I was like, cool. She was like, here's the stuff, like apply to school, whatever. 2.5 months go by, kind of end of the school year, and I make a trip out to Greeley. It was great, basically done deal. Finally got accepted to school, and the next day, so I'm literally in Greeley meeting the whole staff, about to finish up my own college journey. I leave the next day. I find out through Google that Jamie White at Northern Colorado resigned the day after I was in Greeley, and I thought it was the worst thing in the world, but come to find out, she had accepted the head coaching job at Fresno State, which was a jump up from the Big Sky to the Mountain West. And so she's the head coach at Fresno State now. I texted her. She's like, don't worry. The associate head coach is going to get this job in Northern Colorado. He's going to keep you. It's going to be fine. 2 weeks later, they didn't keep him. And very fortunately, a month later, Jamie at Fresno called me and was like, hey, if you want to move to Fresno, California, it's not as good of a deal financially, but I would love to have you. And so literally I picked up my bags and moved to Fresno, California. And that was the start of the journey. I was very fortunate at Fresno. It was one of the most prolific mid-major programs in the country at the time. They were coming off their 7th straight NCAA tournament bid. So literally the best mid-major in the country, incredibly funded, just great people, largest staff and budget I've ever worked with, at least at that time. And I got to be a part of her starting her journey in that program. A new head coach at that place, start bringing in a whole new staff. So we got to learn so much. And the best piece of it was she hired a director of operations named Tom Perkins, and he was in the Junior College Hall of Fame for coaches. And like, it's an incredible job that he did at a small JUCO in Utah. And she hired him as the Dobo, but he didn't want to do any Dobo stuff because he was just a basketball mind. And so she was like, Eric, she was like, he has that title, but he's going to be my basketball guy. You're a GA, but you're going to do all the Dobo stuff. And so I got at the high mid-major level, got to experience just how to operate a budget, hotels, charter planes, charter buses, commercial flights, like everything that had to do with a massive budget and operation. And for 2 years, got to do basically everything logistics for that program. And like, I always bring it back is like literally like months before as a college athlete, I was at an NAI school with 700 people at this university, and we were driving vans to games. And like literally the year later, I was flying a charter plane to Wyoming and, Colorado State and whatever. And so it's an incredible opportunity. And that led me to my first Division I assistant job, straight out after being a GA at Abilene Christian. It was my dream. I'm from Texas, so to come back to Texas for my first D1 job was fantastic. Again, very fortunate. It was already a built, successful program. They were coming off a Southland Conference championship, and they returned everyone on the roster. And so my first year as an assistant, we won the Southland championship again. We beat Oklahoma State in the NIT, and it was like the dream. Well, I stayed there for 5 years, and we ended up going to the first NCAA tournament in school history. 2 years after I got there, 3 years after I got there, year 3, and it was an incredible place, an opportunity for me to grow as a coach and learn from an incredible coach and Julie Goodenough. And at the end of year 5, starting year 6, I'd already started year 6. It was mid-September. Texas Tech had a job opening for director of player development, and God knows I never thought I would move backwards in regards to being a Division I assistant to going off the road recruiting and off the court coaching to a support staff job. But there was a lot of things that kind of went into that conversation between my wife and my daughter and I, and we decided to make the move. And we can talk about that if you want to. I think it's pretty transparent answer, but that would be a long-winded conversation. But I chose to take a support staff job at Tech for a couple of years just to be a better dad and a better husband. And through all that, my first job at Fresno State, incredible program. ACU, already incredibly built program. At Tech, I got to be part of a rebuild, a complete rebuild with Coach Krista Gerlich. It was at the bottom barrel of the Big 12 for various reasons, and our goal was to rebuild it to something that used to be one of the most historic programs in the country in regards to women's basketball. And we're well on our way. It takes 1 year at a time and great players and a complete buy-in, but we're doing it. But it's very fortunate that at the end of year 2, we had an assistant coach move on, and I was allowed to be bumped up to this role, and I'm living my dream. So again, I know that probably was too long-winded, but that's my story in a nutshell.
It's crazy because from that story, everything went up. You went from this position, okay, this position. It's like everything was just like a handshake away. I don't want to say it was effortless, but I know you put work into it. I'm not trying to diminish anything that you did, but it seems like everything was kind of like an effortless step up, and everything was great in your career. It's like, oh, I just stepped up into this role, and this was perfect, and I went to this role, and this team worked out for me. But what was the challenge that you had? I know it's a challenge that you went through, that you had to overcome, but because it sounds like a fairy tale almost, like it's just a perfect story. I went from this school to this school to this school, and it was
Right.
perfect. So
No, it makes
it was at least one.
Yeah, the way that I put it was to make that story the shortest I could make it. But to be honest, at every spot there was learning the grind, all of it. So I can start at Fresno. So again, I was the Dobo without the title and without the pay. Being a graduate assistant you're the lowest on the totem pole, from finances to decision making to all the above. And even like the glamorous thought of it is like at Texas Tech, we have 6 graduate assistants, and they got their school paid for, and they are the highest paid GAs in the country stipend wise. I will die on that sword saying they are. And at Fresno, I was the only GA doing the opposite job basically, and I made $1,000 a month, and I didn't get school paid for, so I had to pay out of state tuition. And so basically, I was in the zeros every month. I literally was walking out every month with no money in my pocket, and I was eating pizza from Winco, which is like a grocery store in Fresno, and that was my lunch every day. Was two slices of pizza for $1.25, and that was my lunch every day for 2 straight years. And I lost like 30 pounds while I was there because I had no money to eat, and I was living in California on nothing. And so that was a part of the grind, like learning how to be a professional in that a high stress environment. Like the expectations were NCAA tournament every year. And so learning how to operate a high level program without much help. And like, honestly, like I had no GA because I was the GA. We had a manager, but they didn't travel with us. We had, other full-time people, but they were learning to be great at their jobs and doing their stuff. So like they couldn't help me because they were just trying to help themselves. And so that was the struggle for there for sure. It was awesome because at Fresno, I met my wife who was in the athletic department, and we ended up, we're married and have a daughter now. But like even that was like a blessing because, at the end of my second year, like our deputy AD, who was the interim AD at the time at Fresno, came into my office one day with my head coach and was like, "Hey, we see what you're doing at your position with no money, and we want to reward you. So like, if you don't have other plans, we want to keep you full time here." So they actually had offered me a full-time job to stay at Fresno, which gave me kind of like I won't say leverage, but a relief. There's a lot of GAs that when their second year is done, they're scrambling for a job. And in January, my second year, they're basically like, if you want to stay, you can. And so like I signed a contract to stay for my third year. And I told them, I was like, I will only leave if I won't say get my dream job, but a dream job for me at the time was Division I assistant job. And sure enough, like my dream job literally walked into me. It was Abilene Christian was a dream job to me, back home, successful mid-major, and an assistant job. And so that was fantastic. I grinded like crazy to network though. Like that, my first summer as a GA, I wrote 3 handwritten letters a day, every day for about 150 days. And to every college coach that made sense to me. And there's a lot of background of why I did that and who I did it to. But like I literally wrote 3 handwritten letters a day, very specific with reason to certain people. And one of them happened to be the head coach of University of Texas at Tyler, who is now the head coach at Hardin-Simmons. But we built a friendship, professional relationship. And at the end of my second year as a GA, she basically was like, I'll help you with whatever you need if you need anything. And like 2 months later, An assistant job at Abilene Christian opened up, and she was previously the associate head coach at Abilene Christian. And so I called her. I was like, "Hey, can you help me get in?" And she was like, "Yeah, send your resume over, and it'll be a done deal." And basically, a week later, I was an assistant coach at Abilene Christian. But it took me sending 300 to 400, 500 handwritten letters that year to meet the right people, talk to the right people, to get in with the right people. And the effortless part was all actually the work that was behind the scenes. Transitioning to Abilene Christian, learning how to do my job, learn to recruit, do all the things. And, I have a lot of like how I did everything. And, it's easy to look back and be like, oh, this was easy. But I had to learn how to be an assistant. I had to learn how to coach basketball. I had to learn how to develop players. I had to learn all the things that had to do with basketball, and then how to build a program, marketing, social media, all of those things, and building a brand. And so like I was very fortunate. I was given full access to our brand at Abilene Christian. So I learned from scratch on YouTube how to build Photoshop, like to build graphics in Photoshop. So I learned Photoshop over years to build social media, but also recruiting mail outs, things of that nature. What we text the recruits. And so like that took years to be efficient at it now. And like it basically got me the opportunity to join a Power 5 staff. And so like before I even get there, like during COVID, like social media became a thing for me. Like really, like I'd always been on Twitter really, and okay follower account, but I just enjoyed talking about it. And then TikTok came along, and I just hit it the right time and became the most followed college basketball coach in the country on TikTok, and talking about recruiting and things of that nature. And between my brain on social media, my skill set in Photoshop, and just our success at Abilene Christian, it allowed me to get my job as director of player development at Texas Tech pretty easily. And again, like, at Tech for 2 years, like the struggles were really trying to be a part of the rebuild and see success when there wasn't success. And so now, like last year, we finished with 20 wins, first time in postseason in 10 years. And so like we're seeing success. And then again, like very fortunate that my work over the last 2 years proved that I was worthy and allowed to be bumped up to an assistant coach. And I remember when one of our assistants left to leave, open a spot for me to possibly, be in there. I told Coach Gerlich, I was like, hey, like you hire whoever you want. Like, you have plenty of money. This is an incredible opportunity, but like, I would love to be a part of it in that realm. But like, I would rather you hire the best person for this job than just bump me if you felt like somebody else is better than me. And a month later, I was promoted, and it was the greatest blessing for me and my family, because it basically screamed stability, because we're going to be here as long as I can be. And so anyway, like, again, that's probably part of the extended version of my story. And so like the first part, I probably tried to make it sound like a fairy tale. In all reality, it was a grind every single day. It's still a grind every single day. But now I won't say I've made it, but like I have reached almost the pinnacle of what you can do as an assistant, right? Like in regards to roles. I guess that, there's an associate head coach title that, you can continue to reach for. But in regards to the level, Power 5 basketball, Big 12 basketball is the peak, for me, especially being from Texas. And so I'm just in a very fortunate place in my life and my career.
Yeah, I like to hear that side of it too, because you look on social media, and sometimes you hear on podcasts too, it's just like one half of the story. You see a person get elevated in these positions, see like a player, they just level up and they start with 1 or 2 offers from a smaller school, and they get 15 more from a big name school, or a coach just levels up from GA to being a head coach at this position, and assistant at this level, then associate this level, or head coach at this level, whatever it is. And you don't see the behind the scenes of how they grind and how they work. So I know for me personally, I like hearing it because it kind of resets what I think of hard work is. Like you just said, you mailed out like 500 letters, like easy. So it's like, okay, maybe the little bit I'm doing right here at this level is not enough. It just kind of resets that caliber of what the real work is. And I think we always need to get that refresher of, first off, it's not just highlights and glitz and glam of what you think it is. There's hard work behind the scenes. But then you think you're working hard, then you hear somebody handwriting letters out. It's like, oh, snap. Why am I complaining about these emails that I can copy and paste and just tweak this little bit here and there, and I can send out 1,000 of compared to your 500? So I like to hear that side too, especially for players, because we think we're working hard, but then you see what hard work really is and what it takes to be at certain positions, certain levels. It's like, oh, I'm like at the kids' table eating the appetizer. I'm not even at the meal of a kid's table. I'm at the appetizer of the kids' table compared to the grown folks' table. So I appreciate that, man. Like you sharing that.
Thank you.
But I do want to hear that conversation you had with your wife about taking that position?
Yep.
Because that, like you said, that was a challenge. So I do want to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure. So in all honesty, I loved everything about Abilene Christian. I never thought I was going to leave. I don't mind saying this out loud. Like my dream job from Texas Tech would be the next head coach at Abilene Christian. I don't know when that's going to be, but that would be a dream job for me moving forward, is to be a Division I head coach. But Abilene Christian would be the dream. I loved everything about Abilene, Texas, Abilene Christian University, what we stood for, how the program was run, all the things, and which is why I was going into year 6 there. I had turned down, I won't say so many jobs, but I had turned down plenty of opportunities to leave. When you win 2 championships, our 3rd year, we had the most efficient offense in the country, most efficient field goal percentage in the country. It was like, I just loved everything we were doing. And, my wife, one day, after probably year 4, closer to year 5, like came up to me one day and was like, hey, like we need to see a marriage counselor. And like at this point, we had a 2-year-old, 1-year-old, 2-year-old daughter. We had just bought a beautiful home in Abilene with nice piece of land, like beautiful house. I still own it. I couldn't get rid of it. I still own it. And like I loved everything about Abilene Christian, and all we were doing. We just got on the NCAA tournament. And I was like, what do you mean we need to see a marriage counselor? Like we have everything. And like most people don't know my wife, but like she came from a very interesting background herself, and like what we had was not what she had growing up. And so like I'm sitting here like, man, like you have a loyal husband who loves you, that we have a beautiful kid, all the things, like literally the American dream. Like it's my dream for sure. And what I didn't realize was she was struggling with how much she was alone at home with a newborn, and she was probably battling some postpartum stuff too, after having a kid. But in reality, it was, mid-major life, you're on the road all the time recruiting, but you're in a car, so I was driving from Abilene to Houston and back in the same day, like where, for me, like now, like if I want to go to Houston, I get on a direct flight to Houston. I come back either the next morning or that night, but it's on a flight. You're not driving in a car for 7.5 hours. And so she was like, with a newborn, like what if something happens to my husband on this drive home at 2 a.m. on these middle of the, nowhere roads, that, and then, mid-major life, for games, like you leave the day before in the morning and you drive all day to get to New Orleans or whatever. And then as soon as you play that game, you're on the road 9 hours back, 8 hours back. And so like this long road trips, I was just gone so much. And like, she just struggled with being alone, trying to do her full-time job and raise this newborn. And so I just didn't know how much it was wearing on her. Like all the things of being a mom and just the struggles of being married to a college basketball coach. And so we went and saw a marriage counselor. Like it took her probably 5 times. Like I was being super ignorant and like not quite, because I was like, I was being selfish and be like, we have it all. Like why do we need to see like a marriage counselor? And what it came down to was like she just needed me to realize that I was living my dream at the expense of her. And that's an ego hit, right? And in all reality, like until I went and saw the marriage counselor, I would have never seen it. And so session 1, we talked about it. We talked about the situation. Like nothing was wrong in our marriage. She was just struggling with my life and hers. And like, she always felt like it was separate because of that. And then literally the second session, our marriage counselor basically was like, Eric, how can you live your dream, your career, but still be a great dad and a great husband and home more for your family? And I literally like immediately was like, be a Power 5 support staff person. And my wife literally like started laughing and was like, he would never do that because he loves coaching too much and he loves recruiting too much, which is true. Those are my favorite 2 things about college basketball. And I looked at him, I was like, no, I said, I would do that. Like I would take a Power 5 support staff job if that meant like maintaining my family and happiness and whatever like my family needs. And for like 7 days later, Texas Tech posted director of player development, brand new job position that they've never had before. And I texted one of the assistants on staff, and I'd known almost everyone already on staff at Tech, and I'd been, professional acquaintances with Coach Gerlich, and so basically, we had that one text message conversation with an assistant. About a week later, he texted me back and was like, "Did you apply for it?" And I was like, "No, like I'm not, like I don't know how much it's paying. Like I'm not, willing to like jump ship just yet." And he was like, "Well, this is how much we're paying, and if you apply today, the job's yours." And sure enough, like I went in mid-September and walked in my head coach's office at ACU and was like, hey, basically explained to her what's happening. She was kind of shocked, and she was like, I need to know in the next 24 hours, basically. And so I talked to Coach Gerlich that night, drove to Lubbock the next day, and accepted the job that next night. So within 24 hours, I was moving to Lubbock. And so, but like literally 3 or 4 weeks earlier, like I basically told our marriage counselor that this is the move to protect my family, basically. And so, like the last 2 years, probably the most humbling for me, because it made me realize how much like my family needed me, and that I needed my family to be able to support my own career, my dream. And the last 2 years have been great for us. Like I've been home more than I ever have. Even during COVID, like that was great. But like everyone was home. But like in regards to this job and like recruiting, like we were on a charter flight for every road game in the fall. You basically don't have any road games because you pay all these schools to come and play you. And then recruiting, I wasn't on the road. And so the last 2 years were humbling for me because I couldn't coach on the court full time, and I couldn't go on the road recruiting full time. And so like I had to learn how to have value and still give input and be my best self, although I wasn't getting to do what I wanted every day, but I knew that was best for my family. And so, when I had the opportunity to get promoted to an assistant here, that actually took more like soul searching than anyone would imagine. Because most people think like, oh, like he took that job to get promoted, to have the opportunity to be a Power 5 assistant. But in all reality, I did it for my family. And so it wasn't easy for me to take the promotion because I had to make sure that everybody else was aligned with knowing that I was going to have more late nights. I was going to have more nights on the road recruiting and all the things that come with being an assistant at this level. But I think the last 2 years allowed me to rebuild and resurface like what my family means to me and how I can give them more of my time and kind of reevaluate there. And so, we talked about me being the most followed coach on TikTok. When I left Abilene Christian, I wouldn't say I completely left that behind because I still love social media, but I just repurposed my time and prioritized my time and to making sure my family sees my face every day. And so if that means I'm not posting on TikTok every day, that's what it means. And so that's what has basically happened in the last 2 years is like I reallocated my time to my family and things of that nature. So that's kind of that story.
Hey, hold on. Time out real quick. We're going to get back to the episode. I know you're enjoying it. I know you're enjoying the show. But I need you to help me real quick and to make sure that this episode can grow, make sure this podcast and show can grow overall, and you can keep getting great guests like this. Make sure that you subscribe and follow along. So if you watch right now on YouTube, help me out by hitting the subscribe button. Go ahead and do it real quick. If you're listening in your car, chill out for a second. If you're on Apple or on Spotify, just like when you get a moment, hit the follow button, but not right now while you're driving. If you're working out or something, or you're chilling in your room, then go ahead and subscribe with me. Like, help me help you, okay? But thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. I'm going to stop interrupting. Let's get back to the episode. Thank you. I think about that a lot, man, as like, I'm single, don't have any kids or anything, but as that comes in the picture, how do you weigh out relationship and business, like your work and your family? And I don't hear a whole lot of conversations about that, because you hear about it like a celebrity level where, the husband, like if you talk about the NBA or WNBA, the spouse is out playing games, they're on the road for 2 weeks, they come back home and they're there for like 2 nights and then they're gone again. And, celebrities when it comes to artists or actors or whatever. You hear about it a little bit there, but you don't think about the full picture of the coaches, the support staff, and the people around the team that goes into it too. How did you first like start to readjust your life? Like, I know you couldn't just snap your fingers to get the new assistant job. So how did you start to readjust your life when you had that conversation with your wife and after you went to the counselor?
Yeah. So like I love to learn. And so like I'm a reader at all times. Like I literally have a book right in front of me right here. And like if you follow me on Twitter, like my goal this year was to read 50 books. And I'm not going to get to 50 this year, but like I've done like 28. And so like I'm a constant reader. I love listening to podcasts, YouTubes, whatever. Like I don't listen to music. I listen or I read. I listen to like learn, not just, so like people ask me my favorite artists are, I have no idea. Like I know who my daughter listens to, but like, because I use that time, like in my car from my 15-minute drive from my house to work is I learn something. Like I'm an avid learner. And so I say that because like I was a reader. So I read, I listen, and like I started
Mhm.
to just try to learn from other people who seem to have success in those areas or whatever. And I kind of got onto this mindset of, when you're single or young or growing up, you kind of have an innately selfish mindset because your dreams are your dreams alone, right? And so when
Mhm.
when you start adding to your family, a spouse, and then you add a kid who both of them are relying on you and your support and emotional support more than just physical and financially, like your goals and your dreams turn even more selfish, right? Because like those are like yours and yours alone. And so not that selfish is a negative word. It's just like when you start thinking of
Mhm.
like that was only about me. Like when I was dreaming when I was in fourth grade of being a Division I college basketball coach, I wasn't thinking about the spouse and the kids that I was going to have. That was how was I going to get there in my career. When I was writing handwritten notes, it was how was I going to get there in my career. And so once you start adding those pieces to your family, your goals are still selfish and individuals as an individual. And so when you start adding those pieces, you just have to start adjusting and pivoting to make sure that everything aligns with them and you and your goals. And so I think that's
Mhm.
where you see people, veer off, like people like college coaches that take high school jobs because of their family or more time, whatever. Like I have no judgment because although their goals might have been Division I national championship dreams, like they did what was best for their family. So I no longer can judge them because I now understand. And so like, I had to sit back and be like, okay, cool. How can I readjust my life into
Mhm.
regards of not having an individual selfish dream and aspiration? And how can I make sure my family is incorporated in my dreams and my goals and that we all align with this thing? And I think that was like the first step of realizing that I was being selfish, and not in a negative way because, I
Yeah.
was achieving good things for me, but it was making sure that I had my people along the journey with me because, like I just kept thinking as we were going to the marriage counselor, as those things were happening, I was like, man, like if I go be a Division I head coach, but it's at the spite of losing my wife and being a great dad to my kid, like, was it really worth it? And so
Mhm.
I think that's what like I committed to my family and I committed to my wife and like being a great dad to my daughter. And so like I just had to realign like my goals and aspirations and reduce my timeline. Like I'm all about goal setting and I wanted to be X by this year and whatever. And like what's crazy is I ended up making my timelines ahead of schedule. But it was after I realized that I could be a great husband and a great dad while I was still doing those things. And so like,
Mhm.
even if you follow me on social, like this school year, my goal is to like go to 50 Texas Tech athletic events with my daughter. And so like we're on number like 18, which is fantastic. And so like, but like that means like I'm connecting with my daughter on that level. And like my wife said almost all of them with me too. And so like that's just like, again, like instead of making it about me, like making it
Mhm.
about us is kind of the kind of the reset for me. And so again, like the best part about tech is like my family gets to be around. Like Coach Gerlich's amazing with allowing like their families, everyone's families, to be a part of this thing. And so like, we're heading to Las Vegas next week for a tournament, and like my family's going to come with. Like we're going to go to Maui at the end, like for Christmas, for 2 games, and my dad's getting to fly with us. And so like it's like getting to experience those things with my family, which at Abilene Christian we just didn't have the budgets to do those things. And so like I think
Mhm.
all the things around Texas Tech and Power Athletics has allowed me to be the complete package as a husband, a dad, and a coach.
Mm. I love that for you, man. Because
Appreciate that.
as I grow into my life and everything, I kind of battle with, do I stay single and focus on the work until I get in that position where I'm able to sustain family to an extent, or do you kind of like build in that position? So with everything you went through, if you could go back to when you first met your wife, would you do the same route and kind of, build with her and be into the family, or would you go back and just stay single until you get into like a Texas Tech position?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I was, I won't say fortunate in the mindset, 'cause my wife doesn't like when I say this. Is when I was a GA, I didn't have much time, and she'll tell people this day, like I didn't treat her well in regards to communication and like giving her of my time because I didn't have much of it. And until like we moved in together, and then she was forced to see me, and I was forced to see her in that regard. But I want to say it was not a joke, but like I always told myself, like I have 2 years as a GA to find the person I'm going to marry, because once I get into this thing full time, I'm not gonna be able to stop recruiting or do scouts or whatever. That's going to give me the freedom to find someone to marry who's going to be willing to jump from job to job to job, as most people think college athletics is. And so
Mhm.
I was fortunate that I found my wife within my first few months being in Fresno. But
Mhm.
she doesn't love me talking about that, because she'll be like, whenever she's frustrated at me, she'll be like, "So you just settled?" So like I just happened to be the person that was there, and you're like, "Yeah, all right, you'll be good to go." And so like that's not actually what happened, but that's I think my mindset early on was like, I need to find someone that's gonna be willing to go on this journey with me, and like move whenever I say move, because that's what the job's calling. And just fortunate, my wife's a teacher, and so her job is relatively flexible in regards to moving. And I would always say that I have an incredible wife. I have the greatest daughter in the world, 4-year-old daughter named Tatum. She's one of my best friends, and like I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I think I got to learn and get to learn through my own experiences, and like I love to share my experiences with others, because hopefully like they get to learn from me one thing or two things during these podcasts or whatever, because that's why we all go through our experiences, to hopefully help others. And so yeah, I would do this same thing 100% of the time. Again, I just turned 32 this a couple months ago, and I'm a Power 5 assistant in the Big 12. And like when I dreamed as a fourth grader of being a Division I college basketball coach, if you would have told me you're going to be an assistant coach at Texas Tech at 32, I would have been like, you're lying. And so like because in all honesty, we were getting ready for the championship game of the Southland tournament, towards the end of my third year at ACU, and we had an assistant. His name is Drew Cole. He's an assistant at Illinois State now, and we're literally like 15 minutes out from tip off of this game, and I knew we were going to win. We were significantly better than Corpus that year, and we'd already beaten them twice. And I literally looked at him, and like my wife is 9 months pregnant. We were about to have this kid, and I literally looked at him. I was like, when we win this game, I will have fulfilled everything I needed to as a college basketball coach. And we went and beat Corpus. Like it ended up being a lot closer game than I expected. We were up 25 at halftime, and it came down, and we won by one, to go to the
Mhm.
NCAA tournament. And again, first time in school history, first time in program history, and it was an amazing experience. But like in my head was like, I fulfilled what I needed to fulfill. Like I went to the NCAA tournament. I got to coach in the NCAA tournament at what 20? How old was I? 27, 26, 27 years old, and like won my second championship, and then literally 3 weeks later, I had my firstborn. And like I literally like couldn't have asked for anything else. And so everything I do from here on out is literally a cherry on top. And so now like I'm like, yes, we're always striving to be the best and better, and we're trying to win the Big 12 and go to the NCAA tournament, because that's our jobs. But like man, like I now get to realize I get to do it with my family, and like make sure that they're involved in everything, which is the best.
So with everything you've been through as a man, as a dad, and as a husband, how has all of that made you better? Or what if you take it from that to make you a better coach? What if you apply from that to make you a better coach and then that side of things?
Yeah. So I didn't really talk about this element not as a husband or a dad, but when I got enrolled at Fresno State for my master's program to be a GA, I wanted to be sports management, sports business, something like that, and I
Mhm.
didn't have enough business classes. And so they literally told me like the only program that you can get into at Fresno State for a grad program is sports psychology. And it turned out that sports psychology at Fresno State is a top 5 program in the world. And so like I get accepted, and I was the worst student that they've ever accepted in that program ever. Like my GPA, my GRE scores, like I was the dumbest dude that was ever in that program, and they let me know it from the get go. Like again, like I'm not dumb. I had a degree, like I was all academic, whatever. But like I was not to the tier of caliber student that everybody else in that cohort was. And my
Mhm.
first day at Fresno, the head of the program, Janelle Gilbert, basically MF'd me in the hallway and basically told me I was the worst student they've ever admitted. and
Oh.
that I better not screw up their program because of whatever agenda I had for the basketball program. And I was like, no, like I'm here to learn. Like I want to be here. I want to learn from you guys. And full circle, 2 years later, when you graduate with your master's, you get the little thing that goes around your neck, and like one of your professors gets to do that. And Janelle Gilbert got to do that for me, and I asked her to do it. And her husband's Wade Gilbert, also is a professor, one of the greatest sports psychologists in the world is Wade Gilbert and Janelle Gilbert, that duo. And I learned more in that 2 year period about how to be a coach and how to build positivity and optimism and all the sports psychology terms and like how to grow a student athlete from those 2 years. And very fortunately, I've gotten to utilize that at Abilene Christian and now at Texas Tech. And I think that's helped me become a better coach than even like learning to be a dad and a husband. And I
Mhm.
say that is I try to be overtly positive in every element I can be with our student athletes. And it's funny, like, we jumped on this podcast a little bit early to get it done. But if we were gonna wait till our original time, like I have these little note cards right here that I'm gonna write a handwritten letter to every one of our players and put it in their locker today. I don't know how many college coaches actually do that. I try to do it every 3 months. Um,
Mhm.
what else? Something that I want to say finally, but we now do at Tech where I used to do individually is so, if I was doing an individual workout with some of our guards, what we would do competitions, and most coaches at the end of it so have some type of physical punishment like sprints up and down, whatever. And my consequence is that you have to give a compliment to your teammate. So if you lost, you have to give a compliment to the person that won. And that's my consequence, because instead of the negative feel of having to run because you lost a drill, now you
Mhm.
sent a positive message, verbal positive message to your teammate. And so they received a drop of, dopamine in their body
Mhm.
that was like, man, this is incredible. And so, what I see in practices is, you lose a drill as a team and you run your kids for losing it. And usually like the practices actually get worse after that. Right. Because like everyone's like in a negative mindset, whatever. And so like my big thing is I want positivity regardless. Yeah, I don't like that we lose. And so let's just
Mhm.
change it to like, if I give a positive compliment to you, like I'm gonna put a smile on my face and she's gonna have a smile on her face. And now it's a positive atmosphere still, even though we just
Mhm.
lost that drill. It doesn't go for every single drill we do. And like Coach Gerlich has actually started to buy into some of that, which I appreciate to a huge degree. But like I just want our kids to have confidence and live with a life of confidence on and off the court. And I think if every time you lose or you don't do something right, it's a negative consequence, you're not going to want to show up to that place every day. And
Mhm.
so for me, like I want to create one of the most positive environments I can by making sure we're giving compliments, by making sure, like recruiting doesn't stop at once they sign the, dotted line of their NLI. It's like I still want to send them handwritten notes to tell them what they mean to me and all the things that they're doing right. Like that stuff matters to me. And like I think that's how I see coaching differently than almost everybody else. Is like there might be
Mhm.
people that like want to be positive but don't know how to do it because they don't have a psychology background, things of that nature. And so anyway, I think that's what makes me a little bit different in this space. Is that's how I relate with our kids. Is I just want them to smile every day and to enjoy being around us and to enjoy being coached by us, because we're not critiquing them every day, but like they know that we're there, we're here for the right reasons in regards to helping them be better, and it's not just a transaction.
Mm. So how do you manage giving them the positive environment with the well, not letting them, go be soft? Because some people see that as, are you just being soft on the kids? Like they need to embrace the negative sides of it. How do you still get them to learn from the losses and the mistakes they have with the positive environment that you're creating?
For sure. So like to me, like we watch film a couple days a week, 3, 4, 5 days a week. Depends on how many games we're playing, whatever. But like film doesn't lie, so you're still able to teach. I love to teach. Like to me, teaching the game is actually coaching the game. And so like I try to critique and teach at the same time. And and the difference would be belittling and demeaning, right? Like telling a
Mhm.
kid they're awful at doing whatever, like actually isn't teaching the game, isn't actually like helping them get better. They're
Mhm.
just telling how bad you are or something, when all reality, my kids at Texas Tech are Power 5 kids. They're top 1 percenters in the world in basketball. And so like they're actually not bad. They're just not great at the skill that we're asking them to do in that moment. And so like, I don't think anything I do is making our kids softer. I think it's realizing that they're high level people. And if you're a high level person and a high level achiever like a Power Five athlete is, like you want to be coached, but you want to learn. And all of our kids want to learn to be better. And so I just do it in a different way. Like the old school way of yelling and cussing and demeaning players worked for one era and works for some coaches. I think my vantage point of how I coach does just fine for me. And so like,
Mhm.
others can have opinions of what's the best way to coach and how to make a kid tougher. I think trust builds toughness. Like
Mhm.
love builds toughness. A positive environment builds toughness because those kids are willing to fight more for one another. Like I think learning the game and teaching allows you to have success just as much as me running someone on the baseline or telling them how bad they are at closing out.
Yeah, I think that's very unique. But I think that's the coaching change you're seeing. More coaches are kind of going towards for lack of a better word, softer coaching. You don't have the hard nose, do it my way or the highway type of thing. But I think you're going about it the way that is productive because you're still teaching, you're still educating, and the players are still going to learn from the mistakes versus being cussed at and being yelled at and not knowing what the real mistake was and how to get better, or just babying them and saying, "Oh, it's gonna be all right. Just try harder." Well, like try harder at what? What did I do? Because you didn't teach me. You just kind of babied me. So I think you found that right middle ground to where on one side you're still learning and educating. On the other side, you're not being belittled or being reprimanded for the mistake. It's like
Right.
make a mistake and learn from it. So I think you found that perfect middle ground.
Right. And like at the end of the day, like we still live within accountability. And so if you're not doing
Mhm.
something right or you do something off the court that's like there's still accountability and there's still consequences to everything. It's just the way that you approach the delivery of it. It's just I just
Yeah.
look at it two different ways. And like to be honest with you, I do it based off of research and facts and other like the old school way or what I mean, probably still modern day coaching is the kids have to adjust to the coaches. If they're going to be a yelling and screaming coach, the players have to deal with it. I just live in
Mhm.
a different mindset than that. Like if we're asking these kids to adjust to the environment they're in, us as coaches need to adjust to the environment that our kids have. And so we use this sports psychology, um, I guess, platform. It's called the Riser Tap Test. So a lot of people take personality tests. That's common across college athletics. The Riser Tap Test is very unique because it's sport specific and it gives feedbacks to the student athletes, but it gives coaching tips to the coaches for every one of those athletes. And so what I
Mhm.
did, I'm not going to show it too much, but like we have this cheat sheet of basically the four key things that could happen within a game and how we can coach our kids better. So one of them says after setbacks, and the three corresponding things are those kids need to be positive to them, to talk it out. So like you need to have a full conversation or to give them space. And so I'll give a story behind that. So my first year, we had this information, like we took the test, but we really didn't have the information. And we had an
Mhm.
elite basketball player on our roster named Bree Scott, playing professionally in Spain now. But at the time, she was going through some really frustrating times, and she was getting blown by in this game. Like couldn't defend anybody. Like her foot was hurting. All the things. She gets subbed out, and every one of our coaches had something to say to her, and they were just coaching her. But like
Mhm.
she just completely melted down, and it was basically a debacle. And we go through. We finished the season, but like it was just so frustrating to coach her, and I don't mind sharing this story because it ended up being one of the greatest stories ever. Is the next year we take this test again, we get all the information, we put it in the right spaces, and her after setbacks it says give them space, and it was like okay, like
Mhm.
after a setback, like in a game, like space might be 75 seconds, it might be 2 minutes, it might be immediate timeout, but instead of immediately coaching them, like let them have their space to decompress, whatever, and then we can get into how we make it better. And
Mhm.
literally, like we always say, like that Breeze, like the poster child of this stuff working, is the next year we come back and setbacks, injuries, whatever, and we just give her space on the court. Setbacks, give her space, and she ended up finishing second in the Big 12 in scoring, and all Big 12 selection. And now she's playing professionally on an incredible contract. And she loves us, and we love her. But we actually adapted and learned how to coach her better, because the other, like, what we were doing was we were just trying to critique and coach right away when she just needed she just needed a little bit of time. The other things that we have on here are coaching styles. So one says soft and positive. The other says balance. So they could take soft and positive, but a little bit of yelling. And the other is hard and blunt. We only have 2 players listed that are hard and blunt. And in fairness, they're our 2 leading scorers. And so, like, we can coach our 2 best scorers really hard, which is great. But there's other kids on here. So we have 7 that says soft and positive. So it says plenty of encouragement, offer reassurance after mistakes. When criticizing, include positivity, and criticize the behavior, not the person. Like, that's what we're like. So, like, this information is like, that teaches me how to coach that kid better. Instead of like hard and blunt and yelling, like, all the mistakes that they made. Now I know that this kid needs, hey, I know that was like, that's not like you as a person are bad. Like, you just didn't close out well here. And like, this is how you should do it better. And like, they received that information better than me yelling across the gym how awful they are at giving up middle drives because they didn't close out. And to me, like, that's adapting as a coach, right? And like, the best part about Texas Tech is our entire staff has bought into this. Is it perfect every time? Absolutely not. But when your head coach buys into it, it means it's worthwhile. And so I think that's as much as our trajectory is going up in this program in regards to wins. Yes, we're getting better players and a more complete roster, but our coaching staff is also bought into making sure our kids feel loved, appreciated, and coached on their terms, not just how we want to coach, because that's who we were and how we were built.
I like that, man. I think that is the next step in coaching of not just kind of guessing game or kind of based off of what you think and feel, but now you have like data behind it to say, okay, I know I can't yell at her, or I know he needs to have, space, or I know if I do correct him, this is how I need to do it. And I think for somebody like me who is more on the like relaxed side of chill, so I'm not gonna yell at you, but we'll have a conversation about what happened. So I kind of like test and just sample. Okay, I'll get on them quickly, like make this correction versus sometimes just give them space and like I'm gonna let you go through 10 shots in a row, just missing them. I don't care. I'm gonna try to figure out, okay, now I correct it versus now instead of wasting 10 shots, I know automatically, okay, 2 shots, correct it, move forward, or get this next play to 10 shots. So I think it's gonna be a way more efficient and effective way to coach. And me as a trainer, I know how to talk to my players quicker versus I get them in, I'm wasting 1 or 2 sessions trying to figure out and get a feel for it. So I think that's a real cheat sheet, man. I really like that, man. That skips a lot of steps in coaching, man. I gotta take that from you, man. I like that. All right, okay, another time out. Okay, look, if you got to this point, you have to be enjoying the episode. Like, you have to. At this point in the episode, you're enjoying it. So help me help you. Just if you're on Apple right now and you're on your phone, okay, just take your phone, press the subscribe button. It's right there. Just do that with me. Even if on your laptop, take your mouse, boom, click over, boom, do your thing. Now you subscribe. Now you linked in because you don't want to miss the next great episode that I have. But doing stuff like this helps the episode grow, makes the show grow, and the podcast grow so I can keep getting great guests and keep doing great interviews. So if you listen on Apple or Spotify, take a second, look at your phone, press the follow button, okay? And share with a friend or two because you'll find the value in this. You want to have this conversation with your friends so they can have the same value. Now the whole basketball community can grow. All right? Thanks for listening so far. I'm going to get out your way. Let's get back to the episode. Appreciate you. But how has that translated to now recruiting plays? Like, do you use that as a tool with recruiting? Do you send recruits that and then bring them in? Or once they're in, do you go through that process?
So right now, that platform has the ability to send it to recruits so you have the information. We haven't done that just yet. So basically we do it with every one of our players every year when we get them in June for the summer session. So we basically have a fresh start. I would love to do it with recruiting. It just right now in the world of recruiting landscape, it just doesn't make sense just yet. But the way that we use it is more of a sales pitch for our sports psychology mental health program. And so again, I have a master's degree in sports psychology. And so my last 2 years as director of player development, I sat back my first year and basically like watched what we tried to do in regards to culture building, team bonding, team building, mental health, sports psychology, all of the hot topic words that every team tries to do. And I sat back and was like, we're trying to do all these things, but it's like throwing a dart and just hitting every once in a while. Like we didn't have a rhyme or reason to why and when we were doing things. And so I told my coach at the end of the year one, because like everyone was touching it, like every assistant had something to do with it. Our head coach would be like, oh, we should do this. And they'll be like, anyway, at the end of my first year, I went to my head coach and was like, hey, we should build a 12-month programming on sports psychology, mental health, culture building, all the things. And I'll run it in-house because I have the background in sports psychology. And then we'll use professionals when we need professionals. And so like that summer, I guess like basically a month I took and I built out a 12-month program. And so it starts in the summer as phase one, preseason's phase two, in season's phase three, and then off season's phase four. We don't do much in the off season because our players really aren't here. So it's really a 3-month programming. And it starts with taking this riser test to get the personalities. In the summer, like our coaching staff goes through every player individually with our sports psychologist. So like there's more data than what I just shared. That's just the cheat sheet. But there's like packets of every information on our players and where they're positive and strong at and their weaknesses are at and how we can help them in that realm. We have mental health checkups. We have people come in to talk about mental health, depression, anxiety, performance anxiety, nutrition, sleep habits. We have people come in to talk about those things. We have alumni that come and talk. We have a massive video board in our practice facility. It's the largest video board in practice facility in the country. It's massive. And, every week we put a different word about our culture and then we talk about it. A different phase, we put a different alumni on the board and we talk about them for a week. And so it just builds the culture of all those elements. In each phase, we have different challenges. So phase one is the summer. During phase one, all of our players have to have a one-on-one meal with each other. So we have 15 players on the team that have 15 individual one-on-one meals with every one of their teammates. So it builds that rapport. Phase two, which is the preseason, all of our players have to have a meal with every full-time coaching staff member. And so whether that's in our office or at the training table. And so, I eat lunch with almost every one of our players this preseason. Again, it builds a rapport that's non-basketball related. I can't find my sheet. It's usually right there. So every month I print out, it's called a touch point sheet. And so basically it has every one of our players on our roster and like basically a Excel spreadsheet. And the goal would be to fill out your sheet every month in conversations that you had with each player that were non-basketball related. And so again, in regards to transaction piece, if every one of your conversations is about basketball, those players don't know if we actually care about them beyond the game. And so like that touch point sheet that I give, basically you highlight or check every time that you talk to one of our players in a non-basketball format. And I don't care if it's 2 sentences, 2 minutes, where it's at, but like just checking in on them as a human being beyond just the game is essential to building relationships and rapport. It's like I literally give a new sheet every month to make sure our staff is reminded of it. And kind of the list goes on in regards to sports psychology, mental health piece of things that we do for building and culture and all whatnot. But to go back to the recruiting element is we pitch that we're the only program that we're aware of in women's basketball that has a dedicated 12-month program for sports psychology and mental health. Like everybody else does things. We have a curriculum that's 12 months that we know exactly what we're doing every week, every month. We have it for our players, but we also have it for our coaches staff. And I think that's something that's very unique. And that's part of our sales pitch in recruiting, not just this one test. It's the package that we deliver because everybody else throws darts while we have a plan. And in fairness, like we have multiple players that we've gotten either out of transfer portal or signed high school kids that mental health has been a priority to them in choosing where they're going to school. And that has been the nail on the head that I think has gotten these kids to commit to Texas Tech is that we have all the nice facilities. We have NIL. We have all the things that you'd want in a high level program. But then we have a priority in mental health and sports psychology within our entire program. I think that's something that's very unique at this level, but just in sports in general for a program at the college level.
Yeah, I was gonna say that like that is next level because with the day and age, we're seeing a lot more mental health uh, issues come up, and I always gotta go back and forth on is it more issues occurring or are we just more aware of it now? But
That's the
either
answer.
way,
That like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that like so it's the answer is we're more aware. But when I put this 12-month program together for our program 2 years ago,
mhm,
and by kind of the end of that first year, we were, I hate to say issues because they aren't issues. We became aware of things that were happening with our players because they were coming to tell us. And at one
mhm,
point, our staff was like, "Man, like, why are all these things happening?" And none of them were like awful, but like, why are we involved in like know so many things? And I finally stopped everybody and was like, this thing working? Because in the
mm,
past, 18 to 23-year-olds would just sit on it, and
mhm,
it would trigger depression, anxiety, and all the things. And I was like, these 18 to 23-year-olds feel comfortable enough with us that they're walking in our office saying, "Hey, I need help. Hey, can you help figure out how to get me help in this area? Or this is what I'm going through. I think I'm good, but I just want you to be aware." Like that is next level to me. And so we
mhm,
can't quantify what this program's doing in regards to wins, losses, points on the scoreboard, whatever. But like knowing that our players feel comfortable walking up to our office and saying, "This is where I need help. This is what I'm going through." That was the win for me. And so, yes, awareness is huge, but like that's how I quantify success in that program in regards to mental health and sports psychology.
mm. Man, you want to be a coach or a player there, man. I like this. It's my lane, man.
Yep.
Um, and I think that is powerful because as we talked about, as players now becoming more forward about these issues. You see, the NBA took a turn, and DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love, and Kyrie. These are players who finally spoke up about it, and the W's been big on it. And this day and age, I think if you're going to be in sports, especially at the high level you're at P5, like D1 schools, you have to have some level of mental health and sports psychology there. And I think more I know the pro teams have more sports psychologists on the staff, but Power Five schools have some level of mental health there. Um, but I think you guys are taking the next level because you have, like you said, a curriculum built into it. So now the coach staff is on the same page. We all have a same direction going, on this one path, this one lane, and we're all on the same page getting there. So that is like a next level cheat code for players to have, to not just know I have this one assistant coach that I can go and talk to, or I can go over here to the sports psychologist or the team therapist or whatever the title is. I can go to any coach and at any moment, and I'm good. I'm taken care of. So, man, that's amazing. I'm glad you guys have that, man.
Appreciate that.
Um, so when it comes to recruiting, do you guys have any other tools that you look into to figure out for players to fit or not, besides like the X's and O's? Do you have anything else that you look at or use to say she can fit with us, or maybe she can fit, but we have to figure out this and that? Do you have anything else that you use?
Yeah. So, for the longest time, I think every college coach has some type of model plan, even if it's like, if you just on Twitter, like trusting your eyes, right? Like, is that kid good enough at basketball or not? And so, I think
Mm-hmm.
you probably learned enough from me is that I like to have a plan. I like to have order. I like to like have everything the same. So when I judge or compare something, it's on the same level. And so when I
Mm-hmm.
was at Abilene Christian, learning to be a Division I assistant, learning to be a good recruiter, but being a good recruiter sometimes means being a great evaluator. Is at the mid-major level, you have to evaluate talent. At the Power Five level, for the most part, everyone's evaluated. It's whether or not you can get them or you have a great enough relationship. So what like recruiting kind of ventures to both sides of evaluation and relationship building and kind of a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things in between. And so at Abilene Christian, I didn't want to miss on kids. I wanted to be successful in recruiting in regards to evaluation. So when I brought a player to the table, they weren't awful at basketball, and I felt like we were a good fit. And so, through my first 3 years at HCU, we had won 2 championships, got in the NCAA tournament, and beaten a Power Five. And so my head was like, well, like I have an idea of the type of players that can be successful in this program. And so I started taking the good and the bad, what our head coach liked, what, basketball things she liked, non-basketball things she liked, and kind of built out basically a 6-question formula of how I would judge a kid and critique a player that I liked. And so like we did that, and like once we got them on the roster, I would regrade them. And I did that for basically 5 years at Abilene Christian. And I continued to critique the model, and it continued to grow. And I added more questions, and I added more evaluations to it. And it's expanded here. The last 2 years, I didn't use the model because I wasn't evaluating on the road. And so like the second I got promoted and I started evaluating again, I was like, man, I can't miss here. Like at Texas Tech, like I can't miss on a kid in my evaluation. Like I have to know why I'm recruiting them outside of they're just good at basketball. Because like, again, like at this level, like it's the details that are just, Big 12 championship and not making the NCAA tournament. And like that, a lot of it's in regards to recruiting. And so like, I have this little recruiting, I call it the Lady right here recruiting and performance model. The rest of my staff doesn't really use it just yet. And I really haven't even completely pitched it to my staff. But this is really for me to know I'm on the right path or not. Or if I'm asked why I like this kid, this is why. It's not just an opinion. It's based off of at least a formula that I have. And so I don't mind reading it to you. Like, again, I told you before this, like I've shared this one other time. This is not loosely knowledge, but my first question that I ask is, do they have at least 2 elite basketball skills? When I was at Abilene Christian, that line said, do they have at least 1 elite basketball skill? But at the Power 5 level, I need 2. And so for that question, if they have 1 elite skill, then they get half a point. If they have 2 elite skills, then they get a full point. And like to me, elite skill means one of the best in the country at that skill: shooting, rebounding, defending, whatever. And some of them aren't statistic based. It is your eye test, but like at the end of the day, like, do I feel like they are elite ball handler, elite passer, whatever it may be? The second is, do they play and work hard? And again, 2-part question. So like you get a half point for each, because some kids, when the light turns on, like gamers, right? Everyone, oh, that kid's a gamer. Like, cool, they play hard because they're a gamer. Like when the light turns on, like they're all in. But like if they don't work hard behind the scenes, they don't get that point. So I want a kid that will work hard and play hard. So that's both, half a point within that question. The third is, can they defend multiple positions at the college level? Again, when I was at Abilene Christian, that question said, like, first off, when I built it, that question wasn't even on there because a lot of people didn't think we cared about defense at Abilene Christian. We just cared about offense. But as I grew, I realized at Abilene Christian, I needed them to at least be able to defend their position. At the P5 level, I need them to be able to defend multiple positions. My only asterisk there is true 5 post players. So like if I have a 6'7" post player, as long as she can defend her position, we can work around it. Because I'll be honest with you, in the women's game, it's hard to find 6'4" to 6'7" post players that are good enough on the offensive side of the ball. And so, like, if you can defend your position, I can figure out how to guard a 4 with somebody else. And so that's my only asterisk. But I need my point guards to be able to guard off the ball, to guard a 2 and to guard a 3. I need my 4s to be able to guard a 3 sometimes. And so that's my judgment in regards to defense. The fourth question is, do you have a high basketball IQ? What I've learned in this game is, because college basketball is so cutthroat in regards to coaches, contracts, success, we talked about earlier, like teaching the game. Like sometimes teaching of the game goes like, sometimes people assume that you should have already learned the game. And some coaches aren't willing to take the time to teach it, because that's probably why the transfer portal is so real. It's because some coaches don't want to develop and they don't want to teach. So they just go get the kids that have already been taught and developed by somebody else. Right. And so like for me, if you already have a high basketball IQ, it puts you above the next level, right? Because some kids walk in the college door and like don't know what a ghost screen is, or don't know what icing ball screen means. And like that's okay. Like we're here to teach you. But when you already know all those things and like make the reads, know how to read a ball screen, you are like, to me, I'm going to give you a point because it makes it like you're already at the next level ahead. The next question is, do they have adequate size and athleticism relevant to their position? And does that translate to the college game? And so I use this one easily is like at the Power 5 level, if you send me a 5'10" post player, they're not tall enough. Then that's just reality. And I hate to say that, but like that's just real because my post players need to be like a 6'4", a 6'5", and a 6'7", and that's Power 5 basketball. Point guards, you can have small point guards that are really successful, but they probably have all the other things. They have 2 elite skills. They play and they work hard. They can defend multiple positions because of their athleticism, whatever. But like that's, to me, like size and athleticism relevant to their position matters. So those are my first 5 questions. And my tab says player characteristics. The next thing down, it says outlying variables. And so the first one is, do they love the game of basketball? And that's hard to judge because, like, when people are just hooping, you feel like they like it, and that's why they want to play college basketball. But if you do the real research and digging, you'll find out real quick if they actually love the game. Like, they want to be in the gym, they want to grow, they want to grind. Because a lot of people don't know is the college game is the real grind because you have to train all summer, all preseason to hopefully enter a game, hopefully get into a basketball game. When you're playing high school, you have your high school season where you're the best player on the team and everybody loves you. You play AAU basketball where for the most part you're one of the best players in your team, but you play 5 games every weekend. You go play and you practice a couple times and you do some skills training stuff. But in college basketball, you have to not play all summer, not play all preseason in hopes to get on the court. How much do you really love the game? Like to grind through it, to play 7 minutes. It's hard. It's really hard. And so I want the kids that love it regardless. So you get a point there. Are they a good Texas Tech Lady Raider fit? So academically, socially, personally, like, are we going to enjoy coaching you as a human being? Basically, non-basketball is that question. So those 7 questions are how I evaluate every high school kid. If I go to evaluate you, I will walk back to my office the next day, type out my evaluation, and set it on my head coach's desk. With notes like about their game, whatever, but they will have a grade on the 7-point scale for their performance, based off of my thoughts. And my goal is to sign players that are a 6 or above. Like a 5 or above is fine, but a 6 or above is like, that would be like super ideal because that means they have 2 elite skills, they play and work hard, they defend multiple positions, they have a high IQ, they have size. They love the game, and they're would be a great fit as a Lady Raider. That'd be a full 7, and now I think you're gonna be an all-conference kid. Going back to it, we talked about the development piece of it. So the next element of it, okay, it's cool. It's like you're a 6, right? And so you're a 6 because you don't have a high basketball IQ, so you don't have that point. So cool. So now the development piece is like, okay, I sign you and you're a 6. And I know you're a 6, but you're in the only point I didn't give you is high basketball IQ. My job as your coach is to now build your basketball IQ to make you a 7. And so now from the development standpoint, I know if you're a 6.5 and your half point you're missing is you only have 1 elite skill and it's shooting. Cool. My job is like, cool. Like, what's your next best skill that I can make elite? And that's how I develop you on the court, is how to make their next skill elite. And so that helps me with the development piece. Where I move forward is once I get players on campus, I add 2 more questions. It's, does Coach Gerlich trust you? Because trust is a huge thing. So does your head coach trust you on and off the court to be able to put the ball in your hand with her career? And then the last question is, are you a leader? And this was the most recent one that I added this year. Is I realized that leadership capabilities really matter in college basketball from a player standpoint. And the more leaders you have and the more trust that your coach has in those leaders, the better your team has at being successful in all elements of the game. And so those are the 9 questions that I ask in regards to recruiting. 7 questions recruiting, and then 9 when I grade my players. And I grade my players at the beginning of the season, and then I grade them at the end of the season. So I have 2 grades. And so did they improve? Where did they improve? And how can we help develop them along the way? Is basically how I use my recruiting and performance model. Again, it's my opinion. It's not really my staff's completely just yet because we haven't really sold it to everybody. But that's just how I try to evaluate so I don't miss, and how I help develop our players. And I think that's going back to an educated, factual way. Is instead of my opinion, is I'm going to write it down and I'm going to compare everyone that I have. And then with recruiting, I go back, even if I didn't sign a player, to see how successful they could be. And my last thing, I promise I'll let you talk, is within each recruiting. It's like after I evaluate off my 7-point question and my notes, about their game, is I put, if I felt like I evaluate them thoroughly enough, I will put where I think they'll be successful in regards to level. And so, like, if I go, like, I went to a kid in, I won't even say the state. I basically flew out to see a kid, and I stopped by a different high school on the way to seeing the kid I wanted to see because they had a really good score. And so I evaluated a practice and a scrimmage, and they were pretty good. But when I went through it, my evaluation, like, they were a 5 out of 7. And then as I was like thinking about like their size, their skill set, whatever, like my eval for them was high mid-major. Like they should play in the Mountain West or the Conference USA. Like that would be where they're successful at. But this player was a young player, so like freshman or sophomore. So my head was like, cool, that evaluation can change because they can grow, they can build more skills, they can do all the things. So I need to continue to evaluate them because they're going to continue to grow their game. And so they could easily play their way into a Power 5 scholarship if they grow in these areas. And so that's my last piece is there's a lot of college coaches that aren't willing to, this is the level. This is why I think they're at the level. They just like the kids that they like because their rankings or whatever. I try to have at least a method to my thought process. And if I miss, I miss, but at least I had a calculated miss.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that. I think that's a great tool for you at your position because you have connections with the different levels to say, hey, I got this point guard here. She might not be a fit for us, but I know she'd be a great fit for you. And now you have an actual rundown of saying exactly why, because they don't have A, B, and C for us, or she's a 5 out of 7 for what we want. But you know, like, okay, I know this coach at this school. You want these things. They have these things. This is why she's a great fit for you. So I think that's a great tool.
Yep.
But when it comes to the skills and the 2 elite skills, do you have a metric for each position, or do you kind of just loosely say, okay, she's a great shooter and she's great at defending? No matter the position, do you kind of care about that, or do you have like guards need to have 1 or 2 or 3 of these skills, wings, so on and so forth? How do you do that?
At this point, I haven't divvied it up per position, but obviously, like if you're a 4 player, hopefully you're a great rebounder, right? Like if you're a 5 player, hopefully you're elite back to the basket. And so like I don't have it calculated or like that narrowed in yet. I'm not sure I ever will, but like I definitely have a thought process of if you're 6'7", I really need you to be great back to the basket. And like this might not be a great skill, but I want you to have great hands. Like I want you to be able to catch everything. Yeah. But same with like 4 players. I would love if every 4 player that I recruited was a great rebounder. Like that would be super helpful for me. And so again, like I don't have a complete agenda or like you need to have this. At Abilene Christian, I would always joke that elite basketball skill probably need to be shooting because that's like we are known for shooting at Abilene Christian, and we could develop them. But like if you came in with the knack of shooting, it was always a bonus for us, and that's how we like to recruit. And so like that one was definitely a little bit more biased at ACU, but here it's if you have 2 elite skills, like you're pretty good basketball. And so now it's determining if you're the person that we want to recruit and the relationship that we can build, and that's the person we can get. And again, you know, I think a lot of people assume that because we're a Power 5, we had resources and all the things that we get every kid that we recruit. And that's not the truth. Like there's a lot, like recruiting at this level is even more difficult than it was at the mid-major level. Like a mid-major level, I won't say it was easy, but once I evaluated a kid, I could find out pretty quickly if I could sign them or not. And that you didn't have to touch and communicate with a lot of people. Or at the Power 5 level, you're involved with skills trainers, coaches, parents, the players. There's so many people that are involved in moving parts, you feel like, because I guess the stakes are higher. And so I think that's the biggest difference I've seen. That wasn't even the question, but that's kind of where it got to.
No, I like that. when you look at the difference between mid-major and P5, what are some of the main things that you notice that, because you're being at both levels and you've trained and coached and developed at both levels. So what have you seen that is like players think that they're P5, but you're really mid-major and they're missing these things? Or what are the things that you notice that like takes away from being a Power 5 player?
The most obvious and noticeable is size and or athleticism. There's
Mhm.
a ton of skilled basketball players that just happen to be 4 inches too short or whatever.
Mhm.
And like that's awful to say too, because like those kids are probably, if they're that elite at their skill set, then there's definitely a home for them at a Power 5 school. But I had a point guard, Abilene Christian, who was a good sized point guard, Southland Player of the Year, Southland Tournament MVP. And I remember my first couple of years here at Tech being like, she'd be our starting point guard. She was a mid-major kid, like low mid-major kid, and she'd be our
Mhm.
starting point guard right now because of her skill set. And like, but like in my head was like, why did she only have 3 Division I offers when she was in high school? And it was her athleticism, just her frame, all the things. Just like she just wasn't built like a what you would envision in a Power 5 basketball player. Her skill set was there, her basketball IQ was there, but it was really her body build out of high school. She just wasn't physically ready. And I think that's what is I always tell people in the recruiting and evaluation process, like those are the easiest thing to identify in a high level recruit is at a young age or high, freshman, sophomore in high school. If you're a 6'1" point guard with a long wingspan and already filling out, like you're athletic enough and your body build's ready and you have the great size for your position, that's easy to
Mhm.
evaluate. And so like that's why those kids are ranked early is because their physical stature is something that you can't coach. It's
Yeah.
God given. It's from their parents, like all things. And so I think that's what people don't quite understand is like it's interesting going from court 129 in Chicago Nike Nationals and walking on the top EYBL court. The biggest difference is going to be size and athleticism. And the
Mhm.
skill set might not be too far off, but that kid's doing it at 6'4", and this kid over here is doing it at 5'11". Like that's the
Mhm.
first obvious thing is size and athleticism. From there, skill is probably the next thing that's determined. And like kids and parents might think they're a good shooter, and they probably are because they are the best shooter in their district or whatever.
Mhm.
But when we're at this level recruiting, we're looking at the best in the country, in the world. Like we're like when I'm talking about elite, I'm talking about the best that are doing it and
Mhm.
at our level and at our age bracket. And so again, like I get film all the time and emails all the time of kids that average 18 points a game. That's great. But like, can you do it at the highest level against the best players and best athletes and whatever? And that's where the next evaluation process goes. And I don't think a lot of people quite have the grasp on during the recruiting process.
Yeah, I think that too. 'Cause I know even for me, sometimes like you see players, and I think scouting and recruiting is hands down the hardest job in basketball. Like I don't see how you do it. To be honest with you, I have all the respect for you because some kids I look at them and I'm like, man, you could be playing higher. Like, what is missing? And it might be what you said versus the difference between a really, really, really good shooter and like an elite shooter, or being 6'1" to being 6'4". Like those small things make a big difference. And um, I think we need to have more nuanced conversation when it comes to these things because sometimes it's left of being cut and dry as like D1 or bust or D2 or bust, and it's like no, they can play at this level, and I like where your framework is, where you can develop to being a little bit more D1 versus the mid major. If you just tweak from being good to being elite now at this level, that makes the conversation a little bit easier to say, hey coach, I'm over here, you should recruit me and look at me. So I think that's man, you've been dropping a lot of games, man. I really like this episode. Like this is good.
I appreciate that.
But I forgot my question. It's crazy. Oh, so okay. When it comes to being good versus great, not just points, but like you said, kind of like the feel of it, and just looking at the eye test. What are things that you notice from a good versus the elite shooters?
So when it comes to shooting, I love shooting. That's my thing. That's why I try to develop whatever is we. So, okay, going back to story time. So when I was in high school, I had a lot of great teammates, and we had a little bit extra money at our school. And we are like, all right, are we going to buy a gun, like a shoot away gun, or are we going to buy this new system? It's called the NOAA system, and the shoot away gun just passes the ball back and rebounds for you, right? But the NOAA is analytical data based on every shot that you take. You know what the arc on the shot is, the depth on the shot, and the straightness of a shot. And we used both, and like they're like, all right, I'll take a vote. Like they're both the same price. I'll take a vote. So we did a blind vote, and I voted for the NOAA system, and every other person on our team voted for the shoot away gun. And so my head coach, in fairness, I was the best player. My head coach comes to me and was like, hey, the team voted, and everybody else voted for the gun. And I was like, that's great. I said, nobody else is going to use the gun. And because I was the only one that was ever in the gym shooting extra. And so I was like, cool. I said, I'll use it because I'm going to use it. But I don't need a gun because I was shooting by myself. I'd go get my own rebound. But the NOAA system would teach you how to perfect your shot, not just get a bunch of shots up. It would teach you how to perfect a shot. And so this was me in high school as a sophomore in high school. And, me wanting to be a college basketball coach. In my head was I would never coach college basketball without a NOAA system installed in my gym. Like I made that statement in high school. And so I go on to play college basketball. I started training in the off season at my rival high school because they bought a NOAA. And that's why I used to train. At the time, it would only tell you the arc on your shot. So you could only perfect the arc, which is a huge element of the shot. And it's now gone on to the depth on the shot, the straightness of your shot. So I get to Abilene Christian, and my first pitch was, we need to buy a NOAA system. And we finally get one by end of year 2. And starting year 3, I called the University of Virginia men's basketball program, who had just won a national championship, and they shot above 40% from 3. And I was like, how do you do it? And they're like, well, we have 6 NOAAs. And I was like, bet. It's like every basket in their gym has a NOAA system. And we talked for an hour and a half with their director of player development on how they use their NOAAs. And so we implemented it with our system at Abilene Christian with our one NOAA. And at the end of that year, we went to the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history, and we were number 1 in the country in offensive efficiency. And because we used analytical data to develop our shooters. And so I come to Tech, and we got one installed 2 months ago, finally. And we're working on our second one right now. And so our, data wise, like I don't have enough data to show that we've proven that we've, the usage of our NOAA has developed our kids to success or whatever. But all that goes back to me watching a kid shoot the ball and how I develop a kid's shot. And so, the NOAA system tells you the arc, straightness, and depth on every shot that you take. And the way that we train our shooters is every shot that they shoot on our NOAA system, it only counts like, a lot of people make 5 from the corner and then you make 5 from the next spot, right? So we only count shots between 3 and -3 on the NOAA straightness system. And so it verbally tells you your straightness of your shot. And so 3 is 3 inches to the right of center, -3 is 3 inches to the left. And so like every time we start our shooting workouts, like whatever we decide to do, we are working on the straightness of your shot. And so I say that because I can't help you if you're shooting left and right all the time, right? But if you shoot a straight shot every single time, you have a better chance of it going in. And so I always work on developing straight shots first, and then I can work on a player's arc and perfecting that. So I go back to recruiting and analyzing elite scores, and I try to find kids with the purest form, because then I can develop them to shoot straighter shots. And once I can develop you to shoot straighter shots, your stats are going to go up. And then my next piece is showing you how to have better shot selection. But like in regards to like recruiting and analyzing, evaluating, I want you to have the cleanest form possible, because it'll be easier for you to develop a straight shot. Because now I'm just working with your eyes and your brain, because your body's already doing the motions. And so again, we haven't had enough time to work on our NOAA to say that's going to effectively produce more wins this year, but that's how I developed. Going back to my recruiting model plan, going back to the sports psychology plan. Like, I don't love loosely saying, like, this was my biggest thing as a player, was like, oh, your shot's flat. Well, that's just your opinion. Like, you don't, like, there's no data behind that. You're just saying that. But when I use the Noah, I know exactly what your arc is, and I know what a perfect arc is, and I know what your perfect arc is. And now I have data to say your shot's flat instead of just my opinion. And I say that because I had a player at ACU who was an incredible shooter, who I always thought she had a flat shot. Well, come to find out, she had the perfect shot. She had the perfect shot. And she shot 40%. Like, it's that year that we went to the NCAA tournament. We had 4 of our top 6 players shot above 40% from 3. Elite. And we made some, like, we were top 10 in the country and made 3-pointers that year at above 40%. That's how it wins you a bunch of basketball games. And so, but again, like, we haven't installed. We just got installed about a month and a half ago, and we're still working on our second one getting installed. And so we just haven't completely bought in yet. But that will very quickly turn into part of our development model. Of, again, I can't stand opinions. I want facts and data, and that's what this stuff gives you.
I want to throw this at you. I've thought about this. And I remember telling one of my players this. I think an accurate miss is better than a made shot sometimes, because a lot of things can go wrong and you still make a shot. But if your shot is fairly accurate and you have a good enough form, at some point they're going to start falling. This is mainly when you're developing your shot. So, you early changing form or whatever. I'd rather have you have accurate misses, meaning, like you said, going a little bit short, a little bit long versus left and right. I'd rather take 10 misses of those in a row than you making 10 in a row, because a lot of things can go wrong and they still go in. And you're like, as a shooter, it feels wrong, it feels weird, and it's like, that shouldn't have went in. Like, in your heart that shouldn't have went in. You banking off the glass and you try to shoot nothing but net. So that shouldn't have went in. But I'd rather take 10 accurate misses than 10 makes. So how you feel about that? Do you agree?
I don't disagree, but I can't sit there and agree, because at the end of the day, my job is about putting the ball in the hole. So if it goes in, it goes in. And I say that because, I just told you about, how, if all of our shots only count if they go between 3 and -3 of the straightness of our Noahs. The caveat to that is, I love makes in a row, because what I always tell our kids is, like, if you hit one shot in a game, that's cool. When you hit 2 in a row, like, you kind of a baller. But, like, if you hit 3 in a row, you're forcing them to a timeout, and, like, you kind of all that. And so, like, I'm all about makes in a row. So for us, like, we'll do drills in the Noah where it's like, all right, cool. You have to make, 3 in a row between 3 and -3. So, like, you have to have the perfect straightness every time, and it has to go in 3 times in a row for you to advance to the next spot. My asterisk to that is, let's say you've made 2 in a row at, -1. So it's between the margins, but you make your third one at a +5. So it's a make, but it's outside of the margin. I don't send you back to 0 because you still made the shot. And so I never want to negate a make, because at the end of the day, our goal is to put the ball in the hole. And so, like, I will keep you at 2 because I don't want to negate a positive thing. And
Gotcha.
to me, like, making a shot at the end of the day is still a positive thing because you put points on the board. And so I'm going to sit here and not disagree with you. I just have a different thought process behind the value of that make.
That makes sense. I like that. So I have to tweak it and come back at you with my new thought process on it.
In fairness, but you're allowed to have your opinion. I think that's the best part of, like, discussions and thought processes. Like, just because I have my opinion and that's how I use it doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah. But I think I definitely know I'm not saying I'm wrong, but I get where you're coming from with that, because as a coach, makes and misses is everything for you.
Yep.
So for me as a trainer, I'm like, okay, let's develop to where we're like, okay, when we're working on your shot, developing you to become an elite shooter, sometimes for me, I remove the whole makes and misses thing, because we get caught up on the outcome of it versus the input of it. So you're caught up on the fact that you just made 10, but all of them were terrible and they weren't the shot that you need to have to be at this position to become an elite shooter. So now you're grooving terrible form, and it's building bad habits up to where you can't become that level of shooter. So, but we have a great shot and it's more accurate and it's more intentional behind what we're doing. and it's looking good, it's getting in the right direction, I'll take that over. But it removes that thought process of I'm missing these shots, but hey, you're progressing towards being an elite shooter now because these are more accurate shots. So that's kind of where I was coming from with like the
100%.
beginner development
And
level.
at the end of the day, like we're in two different positions within the game, right? Like you have like you're
Yeah.
starting, I don't want to say from scratch, but you're completely developing a player. I'm turning a player from good to elite. And like you
Yeah.
probably do that with plenty of your athletes, but like it sounds like what you're saying is like the same thing. Just you have a different foundation starting point for some of the players
Yeah.
that you're working towards. So we're just thinking the same thing, just at different levels, right?
Yeah. 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 I'm loving everything you're saying, man. This has been a very, very fun episode. I feel like I've learned a lot, and hopefully everybody else has too, man. But anything else you want to say and leave us with before we get out of here?
Oh man, I just appreciate you for your time and allowing me to be a part of this. I love basketball, I love college basketball, I love recruiting and the whole process. And so anytime I get to offer anything of my mind and my thought process and how we do things, like it fills my bucket. And so I appreciate you allowing me to be on your show because this is something that fills my bucket more than you would even know. Like I'm giving, and hopefully people receive it and learn something. But um, this helps me in my own mental health space and allowing me to feel like I'm doing what's right by this game.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time out to do it, man, because you didn't have to. You know, you got a lot going on. You just told me how you were busy today and had a lot going on. You got more stuff to do after this, so definitely appreciate that. Hopefully, listeners appreciate it. Like you said, take away the game because you shared a lot, man. Like I have to go back and listen to it and like see what I can implement, what I'm doing with my players, and how can I become a better trainer through this, man. Because this is a peek into the next level of what players need to know and people need to get into. So I have to step up my game now and say, okay, I need to get more elite players now to get them to that level. So hopefully they're knocking on your door saying, hey, coach, you need to get scholarship. So thank you, man. I really appreciate this. And hopefully the listeners enjoy this too. And if you have enjoyed this, I need you guys to go ahead and subscribe below. If you're watching on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button. It's very simple, very easy. If you're on Spotify or Apple, same thing. Just hit the follow button, follow along, because I'm going to have more dope coaches like this coming along, more dope players, mental performance coaches. I'm going to have a lot of people coming on here, but you're going to miss out if you're not subscribed. Okay? Got to do that for me. And then Eric, he talked about, IG and TikTok. You got any more social media people can follow you at?
Twitter, I guess we call it X now. All of my platforms
Yeah.
are at Erick, Erik, DeRoo, DeRootTTU. All platforms at Erick DeRoo TTU.
Gotcha. So if you guys want to connect with them, if you want to get, a scholarship, I'm not saying you will, but, you can hit them up at least and just say, hey, just look at me over here, send them an email, DM, send him some film. Maybe he'll give you a look. Maybe he won't, but he's looking for, he gave you the rundown of what he's looking for now. So no excuses to like not have it. Just train your way up to there. Send them your email, send them your film, and maybe you get something, maybe you won't. I'm not guaranteeing, but I gave you position to know what you're looking for. So if Tech is your dream school, I gave you the blueprint now. Now you just got to run the play. So you're welcome. So if you want to follow me on social media, follow me pretty much everywhere. It's BeBall Jones. That's BE Ball Jones. And that's it for me, man. Oh, every Friday, Hoop Gems. We talked about the mental game a lot. So every Friday, drop a Hoop Gems episode. Just the mental game, how-tos, little change of perspective and how you see the game and think about it. A little bit of inspiration, motivation, throw that in too, because, kicks and giggles, we all love that stuff. So give you a little inspiration to get you on about your day. So tune into that every Friday. Listen in. It's just about 5 minutes long. Nothing too crazy, nothing too long, because we have a short attention span for whatever reason. So I'm just helping you guys out with that. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Appreciate you, Eric, for coming on, spending this time with me, dropping some games, helping everybody out. But that's it, everybody. Thank you. See you next week.